It'll be at coasttocoastam.com, where there's always interesting stories and where we always get emails from guests who have been on with us here on Coast to Coast who have something to add to the news that you're hearing about in the mainstream media, like the Michael Jackson case. One of those first to check in was Dr. Ann Blake Tracey, who runs drugawareness.org. You know her campaigning that she's had going for years about antidepressants, SSRIs. Good evening, Dr. Ann Blake Tracey.
Good evening, Ian.
All right. So when you first heard the stories breaking about Michael Jackson and some of the drugs that might have been involved, what was your first impression?
Serotonin syndrome.
Talk about what that is. What is that?
Serotonin syndrome is where you take medications that increase serotonin levels, and when they get too high, all the major organs shut down. You die of multiple organ failure. And what happens, the main function of serotonin is constriction of smooth muscle tissue. All the organs of the body, veins, arteries. You're cutting off oxygen to the brain. You're cutting off oxygen to the lungs. You're stopping circulation. Everything shuts down.
And we know that Michael Jackson had a cocktail of drugs that involved lots of painkillers, but also many of these antidepressants. How much of these antidepressants can one take?
Well, you're not supposed to mix them, but I see doctors doing it all the time now. And you're not supposed to mix them with painkillers either, because they are also serotonergic. The Demerol is notorious for affecting serotonin levels. In my opinion, the drug should have been pulled long, long ago. But
what, Demerol?
Demerol.
I know people who take Demerol for migraines.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that if the migraine gets so bad, that's their emergency drug that they have in the, break in case of glass case on the wall. That if it's coming down to they're being so blinded by the migraine that they can't see, that they take Demerol.
Mm.
Tell them to stop that.
Dr. Kirk Mills, who is one of the leading experts on serotonin syndrome, has said that he would, and he said this a long time ago, that he'd like to see that drug removed from the market. So you can't mix it. You just can't mix it with these antidepressants. It's just insane.
Okay,
and with all the health problems that Michael had, it's even worse.
So we're looking at the Demerol. What else have you heard? It was Zoloft. What else was in his system?
Xanax as well is what's been reported. Very similar combination to what Elvis had.
Talk about that, because I mentioned that earlier. I thought Elvis died because, isn't this still at least partly true, that he died because of all of the drugs that he took had constipated his system so much? Was that also not true?
What causes constipation? Where's most of the serotonin in the body? It's in the intestinal tract where you need it. And 90% of it is in the intestinal tract to cause the elimination process to happen. But if it goes too high, you've got the intestines constricting so that nothing can go through. That's all part of it.
What do you think they're going to find in the autopsy? Obviously, the family is now having a second autopsy, a private autopsy, completed at the request of the Jackson family. What do you think is going to come out in that, Dr. Ann Blake Tracey?
Well, hopefully in the toxicology, they will find all the different medications that did cause this. But as far as an autopsy goes, they could find all kinds of things because he did have a lot of health problems. I would be very interested in knowing when it was that he started using so many of these different serotonergic meds. because he had, from what I'm understanding, he was showing signs of being suicidal. There were just too many things that were popping up that were bizarre about what was going on with him.
Yeah, he had nightmares about being murdered,
Exactly.
and there's all
How
these.
often do I hear that one?
And that comes up, you think, a lot through people whose bodies are reacting negatively to the SSRIs.
Yes, the increased serotonin causes nightmares.
Very good.
Problem is it then causes sleepwalk, like comedian Phil Hartman's wife, Bren.
Right.
And back that nightmare out.
Thank you so much, Dr. M. Tracey. You're on a cell phone, so it gets a little harder to hear you tonight, but I really appreciate that information, and people can find out more about her work at drugawareness.org.